welcome to the Lightning Network, a Bitcoin magazine hosted space. I do these every Monday and Wednesday, and we'll dive right in just a moment.
This is it, what? Satoshi's pouring from the sky, stack some chips up. No fear of missing out, about to dip and flip, what? Now pump it up and double up is what we hit, what? This is it, what? Satoshi's pouring from the sky, stack some chips up. No fear of missing out, about to dip and flip, what? Now pump it up and
Yo, what's up, man?
is what we hit, what? Satoshi's pouring
How's it going?
from the sky.
Tim, you there? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Is that your DJ music in the background?
Yeah. It's Batters of 21ism. It's this incredible music video. If you haven't seen it, it's Beastie Boys, but it's like pasted over the faces of like American Hodl, Max Kaiser, and they are running around. It's so good.
Yeah.
As soon as I saw it, I was like, I have to be able to play this. I kind of fucked it up just now because normally it's like I open the thing and then I immediately start playing it, but it didn't work quite this time.
I used to use the NHL theme song back in the day when I was internet DJ, Shoutcast, Icecast.
No
That
shit.
was my favorite.
DJ Icecast?
Well, you know, there's a Shoutcast and Icecast. They're like the protocols that you could stream radio.
Of course.
Yeah, back in the day. But the NHL theme song was definitely my favorite one from the ESPN NHL theme song. I wish I could play it. But it's
Could
pretty good.
you do like sort of a an audio vocal rendition of it for us now?
I won't do it justice, dude. But
All right, fair enough. Was it sort of better or worse than like dee doo dee doo dee doo doo? Was that like pretty accurate?
It's like dun 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 dun.
Amazing. Your my rendition was garbage. Yours was better. All right. Well, I appreciate you jumping in on such short notice. You are the creator of lnpay.co, which is, in my view, a herald of the future, where we will have more and more. This surprises no one, of course, that I'm saying this, but we're going to have more and more businesses and infrastructure built out on top of the Lightning Network. And for the audience, of course, we've got Bitcoin, which is layer one technology, sound money. It's completely, or I wouldn't say completely, it's extremely decentralized, very censorship resistant. And then on top of that, we've got layer two technologies like the Lightning Network, which allows us to transact in Bitcoin very quickly, is to say almost instantaneously, for very, very low fees. And so it, in the same way that like TCP/IP is a communications protocol that underpins the entire internet, the Lightning Network stands to take a similar place, not only in terms of financial systems, but also in terms of communication protocols. And I think that the systems that you are building, Tim, accelerate that future in a really exciting way. So can you give us a brief description of what lnpay.co is and what service it provides?
Yeah, I think that was a good description of where we're at with the Lightning Network, or where in the bigger picture where it fits in. So LNPay, a brief history will help kind of clarify where the angle that LNPay is coming from. I got involved in Lightning Network in early 2019, and I was just generally frustrated with paywalls. And I was trying to find a micropayment solution, which led me to the Lightning Network. And I started by trying to build a small paywall solution, which was called paywall.link, which turned out it took the form of a bit.ly type link where you clicked on it and it would take you to an invoice that you would pay, and then it would forward you to the destination, like an article or something. And as I was building that out, it was so early that there weren't a lot of tools to kind of build what we'll call laps, Lightning apps. So paywall.link was a lap. And I started building out other little laps. One was like faucets, if you remember those. They're still around for like micro engagement, all micro payments focused. And after building both of those, I realized that I just rebuilt the same tools again. And so I started kind of iterating into what is now LNPay, which is a set of tools, like a toolkit that empowers developers to kind of build, manage, maintain, operate laps for any application, really. I'm really trying to focus on micropayments because I think that's the big ocean there that's new, and nobody knows how those models will evolve and where the value chains will flow. But yeah, so that's where I'm focusing on micropayments and developers and trying to help them build more in the ecosystem.
Yeah, and more specifically, I run a routing node, and again, just for the audience, you can interact with the Lightning Network immediately today by just going and downloading a Lightning wallet like Breeze or Moon Wallet, that's MUUN, or Blue Wallet, or any number of other extremely effective UX Lightning wallets. And that just means that you can, send Bitcoin essentially instantly and for very, very low fees. You can do that today. What we're talking about here is people who want to be building on top of the Lightning Network, people who are interested in building businesses, people who are interested in creating services, LSPs, Lightning Service Providers, on top of that. And what lnpay.co does is it abstracts away some of the lower level complexity and provides API endpoints that any software engineer or business can connect to. More than that, it allows you to go in. I was messing around with LN Bits. I was trying to give a demo for somebody of creating a faucet that had certain parameters set and was resistant to kind of spamming and stuff like that. And that's actually how I came across lnpay.co. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is, I think it's the first of its type, right? Where basically you're providing this service that empowers developers and businesses to implement this technology very, very easily.
Yep. A lot of the times it's invisible to the end user with the Blue Wallet or Wallet Satoshi or those. It's kind of the other end of that. It's the service that you're interacting with, that you're sending or receiving sats to. A good example is stacking sats back. Leon, he's here. He uses LNPay to kind of power rewards. And so when you claim your reward, your sats back, LNPay is kind of underneath helping the service manage balances and keeping the accounting right and some of that other mundane stuff that businesses still have to do, but kind of bridging the gap between the Lightning Network and the business world.
Sorry, who was that? I'd love to pull them up if they're here.
Leon with a lightning bolt right there.
Leon with the lightning bolt. Leon, request to speak if you're
listening, Leon. Yeah, you should come up.
Yeah, man, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Yeah, man, I also want to welcome Lightning.
It's okay, you can call me Shinobi just so you don't get in trouble.
I mean, in trouble with who? Shinobi, welcome to the stage. You are currently going by the name of Lighthouse in the Blunt Smoke. Tell us, what inspired you as a human to take the name Lightning in the Blunt Smoke?
Well, you see, somebody has to be a beacon of brain cells that still function in the cloud of blunt smoke.
That's fair enough. Fair enough. As usual, your microphone does sound like you are communicating with us from the distant past. So, I'll ask you to try to over-enunciate your words. Somehow your audio is always the worst of anyone I know.
Well, I'm outside and there's cars driving by. But, so Tim, this is pretty much like the whole logic here. It sounds like what you're working on is pretty much having a system set up that you can just bridge with like an existing business. So like, let's say a web shop doesn't have to like completely redo their back end. Like that's pretty much the gist of it, right?
Yes and no. I mean, that's one use case, and that's like the most basic use case. But there's more. There's going to be different ways that like layering micropayment, like payments and micropayments are fundamentally going to be treated differently, or at least that's my thesis. And it's kind of starting to happen with things like streaming payments and stuff like that, podcasting 2.0 stuff. So there's different features and tools that are needed to accommodate that style of usage. And so there's a market like slowly coming up to kind of handle those cases. But yeah, the basic payment stuff covers that. I'm not as interested in normal web shop payments. It's more micro payment focus.
Okay.
Got it. Got it. So, Shinobi, please feel free to jump in, offer comments as we go. You have a depth of knowledge around Lightning that is I always appreciate. What are are there any privacy concerns that are worth mentioning in using a service like lnpay.co?
For who?
Any of the actors involved. But mostly I'm thinking of for businesses. Are there, if someone is someone who cares about privacy, cares about maintaining the anonymity of their users, is there anything there that's interesting and worth talking about?
Yeah, there's definitely some concerns there when you have a centralized, system like this. And we can go into more detail on kind of how the quote unquote custodianship and stuff works. But yeah, I mean, when you have a central repo of data, there's definitely some risk there. But inherently, the Lightning Network kind of abstracts a lot of that away with kind of pub key and stuff like that. You can't really. I mean, if you tried, it's still pretty hard to kind of drill down on that stuff. But a lot of that burden kind of falls on the developers and how they wish to use the service. They can store a lot of metadata if they want, or they can keep that on their own. So it's definitely a topic, and it's one to kind of balance with the building a business and maintaining a good level of privacy hygiene.
So that comes down to like any privacy risks of the business itself, though, like not derived just from using LNPay, right?
Yeah, it's just in general, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that is a very important distinction. I wouldn't want to accidentally give the impression that there was a privacy risk there, because it's definitely with the business, and as we all know, the number of notices that I have gotten over the years that my social security number or personal information has been essentially liquidated and put on the dark web is more than I care to admit. So
yeah, I think there's an interesting problem there for businesses to solve, which is keeping track of users and certain, like, just for accounting, if you're trying to make sure balances are right and things, you kind of build like a trail of user history, and you don't have to necessarily tie that to any PII, but it's still important for you to run a functioning business to have those things straight. And so that's kind of where you have to think about those concerns, and how every business handles them is different.
Yeah,
some of the more privacy focused ones handle it in one way, and especially being in this, as I go down further and further in the Bitcoin and Lightning rabbit hole, personally, it's you have to put it top of mind, and a lot of people just put it to the side. But if that's a priority of yours, you can make it pretty good for your users and yourself when using third parties.
Yep. Yellow, I see that you have your hand raised. I'm going to take a chance on you. And what question do you have? Please keep it, focused to the Lightning Network and, building businesses on the Lightning Network.
Sure. Yeah, man. I have a question for Tim, because I heard that he is focused in micropayments, and I was wondering if there is any development like a so-called Lightning Network app that is around like micro loaning, small amounts of loans, like maybe using some collateral or something like that. Is there something like that? And is that possible?
Yeah, that's a good question. I have microloans in general. I have somewhat heard about in Africa as popping off, but in terms of a Lightning app to do that, I have not heard of anyone pushing that forward. But I think that's a good idea.
So what if, like, in our wallets, the Lightning Network wallets, we can, if that's possible, right? I don't know if it's possible. I'm just brainstorming here, right? Like, you can have like a wallet, Lightning Network wallet, any wallet, and it has a function that when somebody like sends you a collateral, like the 10% of the loan that you're gonna take, then only the other person can like send the loan, basically, and then you can even like stream the interest in that loan if that's agreed upon. Is that possible?
Yeah, you could use what's called HODL invoices for that to kind of unlock the the funds when first part is paid, or you would release take the 10% when and exchange the loan at the same time. Yeah,
because I think that kind of function, man, like I know so many people that are gonna use that, even here in Greece, the so-called first country. But imagine like I don't know, guys in El Salvador, we can like basically give them incentive to take loans in the best kind of money there is. So I don't know. That's the dream, I guess.
you should do that, bro. That's a good idea.
I ain't a programmer, man. I can meme about it. Start it.
But Yellow, do you really want people not making a lot of money to take out a loan denominated in Bitcoin right before the price moves?
Yeah, that's another story, man. I'm just.
Yeah,
Yellow. I was expecting you to come up and ask a question about banana bread. I'm both disappointed and also elated. So it's a good point. It's a great point. I think
he's in on the conspiracy to be serious and not troll.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you. I hear you. This is exciting stuff. It's serious. It's a serious topic.
I mean, it would be useful for like quick payday loans. Like instead of like long-term things, just imagine you need money to eat that you know for a fact you can get tomorrow and pay back. You just don't want to wait till tomorrow to eat.
Yeah.
That's actually, I didn't think about that, but the micro loan doesn't have to be like over a long period of time. It can be micro loan, micro time too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like payday loan style kind of thing, where it's like, it's a loan over 2 weeks. I mean, that kind of thing is incredibly valuable for, a lot of places in the world. I'm currently in the U.S. and I think a lot of more prevalent Bitcoiners are based in the U.S. and it makes it easy to kind of forget that there are very, very different and important problems that the Bitcoin solves that is not as prevalent and as obvious for those of us that are lucky enough to live here in the short term.
Yeah, the point is that if you're going to be saying like, let's bank the unbanked, like we got to build stuff more than just like payments, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that for me was so exciting about, again, like LNP.co is that, I was playing around with basically setting up faucets, setting up withdrawal links. And again, basically, you have Bolt 11, which is the current standard for Lightning payments. And basically, if I want to, if Shinobi and Tim and I go out for pizza, and then I put the cost of the pizza on my credit card, and then I want to like sort of, split it 3 ways. In Bolt 11, which is the current standard, I have to basically generate what's called a Lightning invoice, which can be represented as a QR code. And then I showed that to them. They would scan it with their Lightning wallets, and then it would say like, okay, you owe P this amount of sats, and they could send it to me. And LNURL is a how would you describe it, Tim? What's the term for it? It's not an improvement upon.
I would say it's a user experience protocol. That's what Fiat Jaff came up with, and I agree with that.
Yeah, so Fiat Jaff is amazing. So he basically came up with, again, LNURL. You can check it out if you Google awesome LNURL. You can see all the functionality that's available there. But essentially, it adds all this additional functionality, like the ability to, log in or authenticate as a user via Lightning. Associated with your specific Lightning node, the ability to do what's called an LNURL withdrawal, which is where you basically have a QR code and everybody that scans it gets sent a certain amount of sats, And so instead of having an invoice where you have to say, pay me this amount, they have to scan it and then approve it, you can basically have QR codes where people can either send you money, sats directly, without you having to generate an invoice, or you can do the inverse and basically you can provide faucets where they can scan the QR code and then be sent sats from you. And I was playing around with that with LN Bits, and then came across LNPay.co, which provides that functionality as well in a more developer friendly format. So how many businesses, I don't know if you can share this, but how many businesses are kind of built on top of LNPay as of right now?
But before I answer that, I want to go back to LNURL and kind of
go for it.
like how LNURL started to solve, like became a thing. LNURL withdrawal was the first, I guess, aspect of LNURL that started because there's a fundamental UX problem with the way Bolt 11 and the Lightning Network works with the invoices. So if you need to receive something on the web, you have to basically paste in an invoice to get paid. And that hurdle, that's some serious friction if you have to kind of go to your wallet, and then people have wallets on their phones, and then somehow, like, is it impossible in 2019 to do that easily? And so LNURL kind of surfaced as a solution to that, where it basically, instead of having to paste in an invoice that you generated, there's a QR code that you can scan, and the wallet and the server talk behind the scenes and handle that invoice exchange, so you don't have to paste it in there. And that was one of the first things that LNPay implemented way back that was really kind of necessitated the need for a server/service to kind of process those. And Leon, if you're here, this would be a good time. Leon was one of the first to use LNURL in stacking as a easy way for customers to get their sats back.
Yeah, I'm here. Exactly that. LNURL withdrawal and with Tim, LNPay.co was perfect for us. So perfect UI to hand out the Satoshis, so the sats that our users earn on our platform. So they only had to scan a QR code and they had their sats directly in their wallet. And what we do is we let people earn sats by shopping online. So what you know in the US, a platform like Lolly, it's the same what we do here in Europe. But our thing was that we don't want to hold the funds for the user and pay out every sat that is available for a user directly to their wallet. And with LNPay and LNURL withdrawal, that was the perfect solution for us.
What Yellow said before about short-term lending, that sounds a lot like the current repo market. It could be something in the future that goes in that direction. Say if you had to...
I mean, I think Yellow more meant like payday loan type stuff.
Well, I'm just thinking if you had a lot of capital and in the future there's some more regulation around Bitcoin and you didn't want to hold it on your books, it sounds a lot like repo, doing that short-term lending. Look, it's not relevant now, but I just think that could be something in the future that becomes relevant.
Got it. Alex, I know you're sitting there in the audience. You refused to come up, but I just want to acknowledge you have a blue check mark now. So congratulations. That is quite an accomplishment.
We got to get blue checks for all the Bitcoin Mag people.
If you ever get a blue check mark, I will disown you, P.
Thanks, P.
Uh-oh. We just got we need to infiltrate the blue check marks with Bitcoiners. I think it's actually a great attack vector.
Yeah, I'm an undercover checkmark fake journalist.
Shinobi, write enough articles and you might get a blue check too one day.
I will refuse it. You're never putting a blue mark on me, man.
Mark of the devil. P, where are we taking this combo? I was enjoying the talk about LNURL and all the applications. I didn't know that was being used on stacking either.
For a long time.
Yeah, for us, started using LNPay and LNURL withdrawal from the start was the idea that we want the users to take custody and responsibility over their Bitcoin themselves as fast as possible. So when someone has earned Satoshis, we want them to have it in their own wallet and take responsibility for the Bitcoin directly, that they start thinking about it, what it is, what it is that gives them what gives them value, and start learning about it. Because we onboard a lot of no-coiners, I think, and we bring them to Lightning and to Lightning wallets, and then they start thinking about it. Then they earn Bitcoin, they own Bitcoin, and they start educating themselves. And that was first when we started the project, was one of the main topics we want to focus on.
Tim, do you believe that the work currently being done on contracts and DeFi and the other sort of derivatives in the altcoin market, this is from a coding perspective, do you believe the work done on that and the code that developers have been making in that in the future can be implemented into Lightning through contracts there, or do you believe it'll need to be recreated for Litecoin specific code?
I think all of the things you see happening in every altcoin universe can be built on Lightning one way or another. It might be really far out, might haven't figured it all the way out yet, but I'm a pretty firm believer that it'll all be able to be done on Lightning.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think that the shitcoins are basically affinity scams, right? It's sort of how closely can you associate with Bitcoin in order to leverage its legitimacy in order to promote your own scheme to basically take Bitcoin from people into your own pockets. There are some specific projects that are actually trying to do interesting technological things, but the vast majority of them are just trying to do that. Take Bitcoin out of people's pockets, put it into theirs. And I agree with you 100%, Tim. I think the vast majority of it can be done on Lightning, or will be possible in the future, and the things that are not will be implemented on Bitcoin over time.
Yeah, I think from just the technical perspective too, like I'm not sure how, but the more and more I learn from some of the guys pushing stuff forward in the space, like Lightning Labs and like Sphinx Chat Hall, the more I believe in it even more, that between Bitcoin and Lightning or another layer on top, all of the things will be able to be done. We just might not know it all the way, but it will all be possible.
I mean, look at DLCs. Like most of the stuff going on in like smart contract lands, it still requires an oracle. They just try to obscure that. And like bolting a DLC into a Lightning channel, like anything dependent on an oracle, you can construct that.
All right, Bitcoiners, I want to tell you about our newest sponsor. This show is brought to you by Ledden Io. I have been super, super impressed with the guys over at Ledden. I've actually known the co-founders, Adam and Mauricio, for a very long time. I've had the pleasure to watch them build Ledden up from a tiny, tiny startup to now a super impressive institutional grade Bitcoin and crypto lender. Y'all, I'm so impressed with these guys. They are offering some of the best rates out there. I don't think anyone even comes close to touching them. You can get 6.1% APY on your first 2 Bitcoin that you deposit into Ledden interest accounts, and you can get 8.5% on USDC deposits. I mean, I know all the competitors. They're not even close. If you're going to put your crypto and your Bitcoin into an interest account, Ledden is by far the best. And on top of that, like I said, these guys are hardcore Bitcoiners, and they know the products and the services that Bitcoiners want and appreciate. They come up with B2X. It allows you to put your Bitcoin in, they leverage it up, and you can, with one click of the mouse, get twice the exposure to Bitcoin. So if you're super bullish, Ledden has you covered with a super, super easy way to get leverage with B2X. And then on top of that, they know that Bitcoiners care about your reserves. They know that Bitcoiners don't like under reserved and not full reserved financial institutions. So they are pushing the frontier in transparency in the digital asset lending space. And they are the first digital asset lender to do a full proof of reserves and proof of attestation through a Mariano LLC, a public accounting firm. So the Ledden guys, they know what Bitcoiners like. They are legit. I encourage you guys to check them out. Do your own research and go to Ledden.io. That is LEDN.io and learn more.
Dustin, welcome to the stage.
PTLCs.
Hey, what's up, guys?
We're talking about Lightning, lnpay.co. It's legit.
Lightning's one of my favorite things.
AutismNet, though, not PlebNet, right?
Sorry, did you say autism, not plebnet? Yes, that's correct.
AutismNet.
No, that's not a thing. That's the thing you're trying to create. It's not actually a thing. Shinobi, we'll talk about this later at home. So one thing that I want to make sure that people understand in the audience is, Tim, can you sort of walk people through the use case for lnpay.co versus running your own routing node? Like what specific value does lnpay.co provide to people who are interested in building on top of the Lightning Network? What's the value prop there?
Well, there's 2 things to unpack. One, not really. So routing nodes and routing is not really something that this should be used for. It's not. I don't really help with routing and the purpose. This is more focused. If anything, LNPay's routing and the fees are kind of like negligible, or not really paid attention to. Like, we optimize for delivery, and that sometimes means paying ridiculous fees just to make the experience better. And so, yeah, routing is definitely a separate thing. The value prop for developers is that some of that stuff is abstracted away for you, and you're kind of given the tools to kind of work through that. So right now, LNPay kind of operates in two forms. There's kind of like a full custodial form, and then there's quote unquote custodial. And then there's like a semi-custodial form where you kind of plug in your own node and kind of just use the application layer of LNPay on top. And the value there is, you bring your own node and you can still get the application layer of an easy to use API and general tools to help with micropayments and managing user wallets and stuff, which includes like setting fees and, at a high level, or adjusting those, and for certain users, setting limits and stuff like that. And you can even do that on a per user basis, kind of when you get into the more like some of the more mundane things of managing a service with lots of users. Kind of got off on a tangent there, but that's kind of where it goes. But in general, it's just helping people get started. I mean, that's the toughest part, is just getting started and being able to build on the Lightning Network easily and learn what's going on. That is, I would say, that chief value prop now, is just getting started with normal web-friendly things like webhooks and standard API REST formats, so you don't have to interface directly with your node, which is low-key a huge pain in the ass. Don't have to deal with gRPC.
How dare you?
Don't have to, kind of do all these things if you're trying to just test out tiny little service to see if there's anything there. And that's where it started as custodial, and now it's kind of, over time, that was used to help bootstrap it. But over time, as the tools and things, like, people have nodes now, so you can, it's easier to spin up nodes on Voltage or Umbrels and things, and it'll kind of slowly move away from custodianship as you kind of get more advanced, and it's easier to abstract away the complexities of running a node, which has always been the core problem.
Absolutely. But I mean, I think, looking at your website, you offer direct integration with Zapier. That's a very powerful function. It's a powerful feature, right? There's so many apps that are connected via, or I guess Zapier, as they like to say. So to be able to integrate Lightning into one's business app workflows via Zapier, that's pretty fucking huge.
Yeah, just general integrations that people are used to, right? From a normal, when you go and build your, normal SaaS business, everyone plugs into all these things. It's pretty much by default, right? And so that ecosystem is not really, just is not built yet in Lightning. That's how it's early. It's like all these things will exist, these integrations, all this stuff will be there. It's just not there yet.
So how does the on the website, like, you've got like Sat Mailer, integrate Lightning Network into your emails, reward your readers with loyalty sats via LNURL, or include Lightning invoices directly in your emails for purchasing. How does that, like, is that a specific integration that you provide, or is that something that somebody can do via something like Zapier?
So that, I don't know if Joe Rogers is here.
Probably not.
But yeah, probably not. But he was the first one to actually use. So when I first was like obsessed with putting Lightning in emails, with just because you can put an invoice in an email, and you could, as a static QR, and you could just pay it and something could happen. So, and then with LNURL, you could actually give people money in an email.
That's the thing that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I kind of got obsessed with that. And Joe and I worked together on creating probably the first loyalty newsletter, like Sats newsletter, when he was running his Bitcoin Words, where every user would, or when he would send out his journal, there would be some Sats there that you could pull. You could pull the Sats, and if you pulled the Sats, you got another email, because Zapier would trigger a send to send another email to you that you pulled the Sats. And also, and he did the other way too, where you could buy something, and you could pay or tip, and then it would send you an email with like, "Oh, thanks for tipping."
Yeah, I mean that kind of functionality.
Yeah, that kind of functionality.
No, I was going to say, I mean, that kind of functionality is so important in terms of adoption, right? Because all of us are really, at least I don't want to speak for everyone, but something that I spend a lot of time thinking about is like, how can we make Bitcoin and the Lightning Network more approachable for the vast majority of people. And I think that's a super important thing. And I think like integrating with Zapier is like one of those things where it's like everybody just goes to Zapier, you know, programmers, non-programmers alike, go to Zapier and they're like, okay, what can I integrate with? And so to have that functionality available is pretty powerful.
Yeah, another thing with the emails in general, like the email is a very, like I come from, you know, this like traditional startup world where like, you know, email marketing is done and stuff like that. And, you know, there's a lot of metrics like open rates, click-through rates, impressions, all that stuff that are, you know, people use to engage with their audience. And if you can add another layer in there, which is money, you can start, you know, getting like cost per things, like a real cost, like cost per open, like when, or like if you pay, you know, you pay people, you can see if your readership goes up because you paid people. Maybe you can ditch ads, you know, and it actually is win-win for everyone. So those kind of metrics are cool to see if it's going to work like we think it's going to work with micropayments, kind of micro engagement, you know, if that stuff actually plays out. It's still it's unclear, but it's cool to think about and test out.
I think we're seeing a little bit of that here in Spaces. I looked this morning, there was paid Spaces in here. Are they run on this same system, Tim, on the Lightning system?
Yeah, I haven't actually played around with much of the functionality in Twitter with tipping and stuff, but yeah, like exactly, stuff like that.
I'd be surprised if paid Spaces were already native Lightning, but that would be amazing if they were. Okay, so I want to open the floor to the people that are on stage first. Are there any comments, thoughts, questions you have about the future of the Lightning Network, the work that is being done that we've discussed so far, or any ideas that you have? And then following that, I want to open the floor and bring some people up to ask specific questions, voice ideas, and then we'll tear them apart unless they're good ones. So to start, people on stage right now: Dustin, Shinobi, Alex, everyone else, Leon, do you have thoughts?
Yeah, last time I see something interesting, and that's the connection between digital payments. So in this case, LNURL Pay and physical actions, physical events, so that you can pay a Lightning invoice and that triggers a physical event. Been experimenting with that myself, but I think we will see what use cases come up in the next months and years, because I think there's a lot of possibilities there. I experimented myself with just doing a Lightning payment, and that triggered some kind of sprinkler in the garden. But you could also think about air conditionings in hotels and other events in the physical world that can be triggered by digital payments. So we're very early with that, but I think a lot of ideas will come up in the next year.
Leon, I'm not gonna tell you that will definitely be at Bitcoin 2022, but I'm gonna strongly imply it. There may or may not be, you know, Lightning Tesla coils that can only be activated by direct payments to Lightning addresses that donate to charities. These are things that are possibilities, but it's going to be exciting.
Sure. Very, very cool. We have to stay experimenting with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one thing that I'll just say as an aside is I continually have the experience of having to explain to people why it is so significant that the Lightning Network allows you to send value to another person instantaneously for essentially low fees with no intermediaries. It is continually surprising to me that I have to articulate to people, like, do you understand what happens when you send money through Venmo? Do you understand the number of actors that are in that chain that have insight into your information, your data, and can block that transaction from happening if they choose to? And people just don't get it. And I think in a lot of other countries, to something we were talking about earlier, that's very, very front of mind. But in the US, at least, which is where I'm currently based, people are just completely oblivious to it. So when you talk about that functionality of the Lightning Network, of Bitcoin, people are sort of like, yeah, but why do I really need that? And it's like, oh, you will need that.
it's inevitable that eventually everything will be a Bitcoin Lightning payment. And I appreciate, Tim, it sounds like you're working on the last mile effort to really get Bitcoin to more places. And I think that's a really important piece of the whole picture.
I'd actually like to hear Tim and Leon's thoughts about like any kind of friction or timetables as far as like Bolt 12 replacing Bolt 11 will go, given like how many services have integrated LNURL, which is pretty much like built out specifically because there wasn't something like Bolt 12 already. Like, do you guys see that taking a lot of time just because of how much is already built up around the LNURL? Like, you know, any frictions or pain points in that transition?
I think it's still a little Wild West, man. There's probably, I think it'll be a while before we see a real dominator, but yeah, LNURL's got the first mover advantage and has a lot of traction. Bolt 12 solves kind of the same thing, but also you got this extra layer of like LND and C Lightning politics. So you also need the nodes to implement Bolt 12, which is like an extra hurdle, and LNURL is kind of outside of all that on the application layer. So
how much overlap is there between LNURL and Bolt 12?
For example, when you look
Zero, right?
Yeah, when you look at our solution, we send a payout to the user, but we cannot pay out a user via Bolt 12 at the exact same time, because at the time that we send the LNURL withdrawal, we don't know if the user is online, if his node is connected to the internet. So I think for us, the LNURL withdrawal is always the preferable way for now, I guess.
So you guys see like a lot of like wait and see, and even if the politics between implementations is sorted out, like it's probably not going to, we're not going to see services like jumping over really quickly.
I mean, what does jumping over mean? It's I think if anything, it'll just be like dual support, or it'll be, Bolt 12 supported, LNURL supported. I have a hard time. It's tough to see where it's going to go, but I can see kind of, it's been a hot topic lately at some of the conferences and things, kind of where that's all going to fall. Because you can even make the argument that both LNURL and Bolt 12 are unnecessary by just using, key send amp and some special custom parameters that kind of define what you need to do. Like you don't
the Bosworth hypothesis.
Yeah, and then it stays on it stays all contained on the Lightning Network too, which LNURL kind of, takes advantage of HTTP, and then you have issues with DNS, and it's just like, it's actually a very complex topic.
Yeah, and I think the hardest nut to crack now is, how do I send Bitcoin via Lightning in a non-custodial way to a user that is not online? There's no solution for that yet. So
there was one I heard talked about fairly recently. I suspect it's coming.
Can you elaborate, Dustin?
I forget. I mean, I was just speculating on this in Austin a couple weeks ago, and with Greenlight with C Lightning, as far as I can tell, it should be totally possible to receive stuff and not send it while your key is offline. Greenlight is the thing that separates your key from your actual, like, all the rest of the Lightning node. Anyway, I can't tell you how the theory this person had. I just heard it secondhand, but I believe it's theoretically possible, and if that's true, I expect it'll be in a little while. You'll see it come out.
So I think how that works is you have a central node. I think Breeze did this for a little bit. I don't know if they still do it, but basically, you have someone like Breeze who's got like a spoke hub situation, and then all the leaves are connected to the hub, and the hub will hold the payment until the node comes online and then send it. And that's how Greenlight also works. I don't know if they do it the same technically, but that's the general idea. And Greenlight is a pretty hot topic lately too, because of the separation. The key there is the separating of the signer, which is a pretty interesting concept. But basically, you can pull your keys, like your keys are, you just need your keys to receive and send, but you don't necessarily need the node software in the same spot. Like you could have a node in the cloud and have a USB drive plugged into your computer somewhere, and you could send and receive payments when that USB drive's plugged in, but when you unplug it.
Yeah, but there's no theoretical reason you couldn't receive while the signer's offline, right? Like, there's no sats at risk for the other side. It's just on your own, so there's no risk to that.
Yeah, you're true. Just sending.
There are some weird cases that prop up that you might need a watchtower, like might need a little more than other cases. I haven't worked through all the details, but anyway, I just think it's theoretically possible.
Also, again, just to bring it back around, theoretically possible for someone to receive sats while their node is offline, while their Lightning node is offline. Okay, got it.
Yeah, some variant of offline. Their keys are offline, right?
Yeah, yep, totally. And again, I know I say this constantly. I feel like it's the most common saying I say, but for the audience, what we're talking about here is with a Bitcoin Core node, which is layer 1, Bitcoin, sound money, decentralized, censorship resistant, all that stuff. You do not have to be online in order to receive payments. So if Dustin wants to send me money for a pizza that I baked him, or for putting his boat out when he set it on fire because he's doing immersion mining, whatever it is, he can send that payment. It gets set in the blockchain, and then basically I can like boot my node back up after 6 months, catch everything up, and then be good to go. And in the Lightning Network, your Lightning node by default or in general has to be online all the time because the Lightning Network is extremely dynamic. And so, there are services that are fully custodial. That is to say, they hold your keys for you and run all the systems in place to basically maintain your liquidity and your availability, like Blue Wallet, or you can use systems like Breeze, where you're actually running a full node that is a neutrino node. So it's actually it's not a full node. It is a pruned node on your phone in real time that basically will give you alerts if you don't open the app frequently enough. It'll say like you got to open your app because your node needs to be online in order to make sure that you're not missing anything. So what Dustin is talking about is on the Lightning Network, how can you have full custody of your private keys and then also be able to receive payments without problems if you are not available?
Well, I mean, if you kind of tweak what full custody means, like you could have the other side of your channel just keep signing updates that update the balance and then waiting till you come back online to have you sign and then exchange the revocation keys. But you would be in like a weird limbo where none of that was enforceable until you did that. And obviously like would have to trust your channel counterparty.
It's exactly that. You wouldn't need to trust anybody though. As long as you're receiving, the other side has no risk. You can't steal any funds. Like the trust all works out. But that's exactly correct. You would have them sign their half of the updated state and then relay it to the online portion of the Greenlight service. And then when you come back online, then you would sign the new states and stuff. And you wouldn't be able to send through that channel again until you caught up the signatures.
Well, like you wouldn't be able to enforce that until you exchange the penalty keys for like the most current state.
Yeah, but
so like you know what I mean? Like any of those.
Wait, but I think we're getting too in the weeds here. We got to define our terms. So when we talk about penalty keys, justice transactions, things like that, you got to like provide context for the audience.
Well, like the only way you can enforce like the current channel balance is having the penalty key to effectively steal the other party's like entire channel funds if they try and cheat.
Exactly. So again,
so like so this offline like receiving system, like you could have that go through, but like all the recent payments that happened while you were offline, your channel counterparty could still use the channel state to close the channel before those payments until you come online and sign everything and everybody exchanges penalty keys.
Yep.
Because unless you're online to get that, like you can't really enforce those payments.
Yep. And to be clear, what we're talking about here is the Lightning Network is basically, it's like a spider web. You run a node, or you can run a node if you choose to. And basically, just because I do not have a direct connection to Shinobi, I can still send him payments. If I have a channel to Dustin and Dustin has a channel to Shinobi, I can basically route payments through Dustin to Shinobi. And then all the people that I have channels open with, which are like 2 of 2 multi-sig contracts. So whenever anybody says like, oh, you can't do smart contracts on Bitcoin, they're totally full of shit. It's absolute garbage. You 100% can. And Bitcoin was the first blockchain to implement them. Though, you know, people get weird around like Turing completeness, which is not a feature. It is a bug. Essentially, there is a risk if you go offline as a Lightning node. If your Lightning node is unavailable, because essentially what a channel is it's basically, it's kind of like a bar tab that is updated in real time between 2 people. So Shinobi and I have a channel that we've opened between our 2 nodes, which, by the way, Shinobi, I'm furious that we do not yet have a channel open. Then, you know,
or do we?
Oh, shit, dog. Okay, well, that's a possibility. Point is, if I take Shinobi out for beers and I buy him a beer, and then I say, you know, okay, you owe me $5 or whatever, and then he basically updates our channel state, and then we go back and forth, that's fine. But then if my node goes offline and I'm like sort of down for the count, Shinobi can, in theory, publish a false channel state, which says something like, P owes me all the money that was opened in this channel, and he can go fuck himself. And so there's systems that mitigate that type of behavior, and they create incentives, because that's what Bitcoin and the Lightning Network is all about, right? It's all about these incentives that basically drive optimistic, or I would say correct behavior. So one thing is there's watchtowers, which are basically systems that you can set up that allow you to send your channel state to third parties, and so that if something goes wrong, they can publish what is called the justice transaction, which is my favorite term in Bitcoin, full stop, no scrubs. The justice transaction allows someone who has been cheated in terms of channel state to not only reclaim the funds that were rightfully theirs, but also to reclaim the funds that the other person had that were previously on their side of the channel. So you want to be very careful about trying to, or not even you want to be. No one tries to screw each other, or very few people do, because the threat of a justice transaction is so great that it's just not worth it economically. And so that's kind of what we're talking about here. Would you add anything to that, Shinobi or Dustin?
Well, I just want to like kind of clarify that, like, until you come online in this example of like receiving a payment while you're offline and sign things and exchange those penalty keys, like you can't consider those payments finalized or enforceable. Like nobody can go back and like steal all your channel funds, but they could theoretically do that with like the little amounts that you've received in payment.
You're getting their half of the assurance keys. So this would require restructuring the protocol and having a special kind of justice transaction. But as I understand it, there should be no reason you wouldn't be able to get those funds with just their half of the signature keys, even though you haven't updated your side.
Well, like think about this. They can't give you their penalty key until you give them theirs. Otherwise, they're screwing themselves. It would require
a protocol update where they did give you the penalty key without getting yours yet. Exactly.
Yeah.
I had one thing to say before I'm going to step down and let some others speak. It was a question for you guys who are very tech savvy around Lightning, and excuse my ignorance here if it's a stupid question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. With the standard internet protocols and things that go on around censorship and things, with people running Bitcoin full nodes and running Lightning nodes and Lightning channels, are we going to see a future where there's a decentralized internet too, where if I'm currently in a jurisdiction that blocks me, like China, from communicating over the web, that I could possibly send SAT and attach to those SATs with information, and they'd be able to interact again with the web even though I'm censored?
It sounds like you're describing the Tor network.
I'm sort of just, what I'm trying to say here is if I'm running a Bitcoin node and a Lightning node, and my country's censoring me from most HTTPL stuff, Google and stuff like in China, can I send information and data through the Lightning network and reroute around those censorships?
Yeah, you definitely.
I would probably send it through the Tor network. That's what I would do. The Lightning can be run over the Tor network, and a big portion of it is actually. But the Tor network is really the solution.
Yeah, I got a real life example on this, because we got a user in our community here in the Netherlands. He lives in China, and he sends donations to a podcast via Lightning on a weekly basis, and he runs his own Tor Bitcoin Lightning nodes, and he just sends it all from China.
Yeah, but you could totally send a message over Lightning that's also over Tor, and that would work just fine. That works today. I mean, Tor is useful for people getting around their great firewall in China today, and it's used actively for such purposes. But it's kind of old tech. It's like sort of already been solved, but still very cool.
Just want to welcome
You
Rindell.
really don't want to. Yeah, like you can put arbitrary data in Lightning, memos or something. Like you don't actually want to do that. Like, years ago, the thing to do to impress your friends was to tunnel like HTTP over DNS, right? It's like you go to a hotel and the hotel has a captive portal where they want you to pay for the internet. So you say, fuck you, I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to have a DNS server that acts as like an HTTP proxy and like tunnels all of my HTTP responses like over DNS. Like, yeah, you can do that, but it's not very scalable, and it's going to be even worse on Lightning. Lightning bandwidth is like very constrained. If you want to do kind of like interesting network protocols with Lightning, the thing to do is use Lightning transactions for coordination or signaling, and then you use normal other internet protocols for the actual payloads. So like,
you're talking about something like Impervious?
Yeah, like Impervious, or if you wanted to do some like, video calling application, right? You would like use, or audio calling for that matter, you would like use Lightning to trade a bunch of like SIP parameters, and then you just like do normal voice over IP. So if you're worried about censorship, use like Tor or, I2P or any of the other, systems for doing the internet or the web over censorship resistant networks. Like, please don't try to, serialize arbitrary web responses into Lightning messages. Like, you're going to have a bad time and you're going to cause problems for the network.
Is Tor allowed in China? Like, is that not banned?
It's unstoppable. You can't stop it. That's sort of the point.
Well, it's unstoppable as long as the U.S. government supports it, right?
I don't follow. Is that a joke?
Well, no, not really. My understanding is that Tor is dependent on the U.S. government in order to function reliably.
So what they say is the vast majority of the relay Tor nodes are operated by like the CIA or something, right? Something like that.
Yeah, but you shouldn't be using those anyway. You should use native,
100%.
Not the relays.
Well, I mean, like the whole Tor node, you are implicitly trusting a bunch of hackers, mostly in like Berlin and Europe, who run the directory servers, which actually like filter out all the relay nodes that you build circuits from. So like Tor in and of itself is like inherently centralized around those group of people.
Fun fact: the main Tor team is like almost all women.
No shit.
I would say half spooks.
That has nothing to do with their gender or their biological sex. Sorry, I'm eating a loaf of bread right now.
To the earlier question, though, you have the ability to attach a message to a payment, right? Like in a key send. But those are short messages. Those are not like, you won't be able to download a page or something like that. But you can send a message to
80 characters, I think.
Yeah. The idea would be that you use the key send to coordinate something on ClearNet wherever you can.
You can send to a pub key, small amount and a message, and you should be able to coordinate at least messaging part of it.
Yeah, I mean, Thunderhub has this built in. It's a little bit wonky, but it works.
Yeah, I mean, just to go all the way back to something we were talking about probably 30 minutes earlier, there's the question of what should be built at the app layer versus built at the protocol level. And there was a great conversation with like John Carvalho and Lisa and Vivek and Alex Bosworth from Blockstream that was basically going back and forth about this topic. And I think...
Whoa, Alex is not Blockstream.
No, sorry. Alex Bosworth is Lightning Labs. So Alex Bosworth of Lightning Labs, Lisa and Vivek of Blockstream, and then John Carvalho of, the stealth startup that he's been, promoting for forever. And That is an interesting topic. It's basically what should be built at the app level, which is, Alex Bosworth has built this incredible tool called Balance of Satoshis, which most of us use who are running routing nodes. And it uses key send in order to facilitate a bunch of pretty amazing functionality, very, relatively seamlessly, that is not available currently on the Lightning Network at the protocol level. That's kind of Lightning Labs position. And then the Blockstream position is that, no, that should all be built at the protocol level. And that should be something that we all agree on so that we can all be on the same page. And it's an ongoing debate, but it's an interesting one for sure.
Did Alex or anyone bring up the LSAT idea, the authentication token? Because I've been looking at that lately, and I feel like people aren't doing anything with that, even though it has a lot of really cool concepts that you could do with it.
Can you elaborate, Nate? What is it?
Yeah, so March of last year, Lalu from sorry, I'm holding my baby. From Lightning Labs is talked about the Lightning Service Authentication Token, the LSAT. And the LSAT's used a little bit in their pool, but it's also like an open like library of functions and stuff. So you can essentially have a Satoshi different from all the other Satoshis on the Lightning Network. So you could sell tickets. So it would solve a problem of like Bitcoin, the Bitcoin conference, right? Like all you need is an email. So nothing's really stopping you from selling your ticket like 5 times, right?
I thought that LSAT was based on macaroons for authentication.
So the way that it's pay for an API token, right? So it's like you hit an API and it sends back, God, what is it? It's like a HTTP, what is it, 402 or something? It's the
402
payment required, right? Which it's hilarious that we have an HTTP error code for years, which is payment required. Like nobody's done anything with it. Yeah. But the idea is like you have the server send back this payment required, and attached to it is a Lightning invoice. The client pays the Lightning invoice, and I think the way that LSATs work also is like the Lightning invoice also comes with like an auth token. So you pay the invoice, and then that auth token is good for whatever like metered or prepaid amount of like API access that you paid for. So there's like a piece of open source software called Boltwall, which it's written in Node.js. So if you have like a JavaScript application, like an Express application or something, you can like put Boltwall in front of it and basically have like a paywall for your API. And if you want to do like normal paywall stuff, you can do that, but you can also do like paywalls for software. So you vend, I don't know, weather data, and you want people to like pay for programmatic access to the weather data. The idea is that like LSATs are a mechanism to have software agents pay for data access, which is like really effing cool.
I think the easiest way to describe an LSAT that I've heard is it's a macaroon with an invoice attached to it. That's pretty much it. And the macaroon can have complex permissions embedded in there.
So are there any like projects that are using this, or is this a problem of sort of foundational development?
I like to imagine that was you making that noise, not your child.
Hey, P, I've known you since she was born, dude.
No shit. How old is she?
7.
Wow. Congratulations, man.
Yeah, she's a goofy. But yeah, no, I was talking to somebody earlier today about it, and we were like, yeah, it's a problem. We were thinking it was a problem of foundational development. So like, so people that want to use LSAT like can do it easier.
Yeah, I think that there's a couple different chicken and egg kind of things going on, and like it'll get resolved one day either by LSATs or by something else. But like one of the things that would be awesome to see with LSATs, right, is like really good integration into OpenAPI/Swagger, right? So like there's, for people who don't know, there's like a set of libraries called Swagger, or now they're called OpenAPI, where the idea is like you define a web API with like a interface definition file, and you say like, these are the API calls that I allow, these are the parameters, these are the responses, these are the errors. And then it generates like a stub server for you, and it'll generate clients in whatever language you want. So the idea is like, I build my weather service API, I put out a Swagger definition for it. And if somebody wants to use Python or Java or JavaScript or Golang, they just like hit a button and they get a client for it and they can call it. So if you integrate LSATs with like that kind of code generation, then what you can do is you can say, okay, I'm going to build an API that uses LSATs, and like a dozen different languages can all call it, and they know how to pay for their access. That's a lot better than saying like, oh, in order to use this, you have to like write a bunch of clients that all know how to like negotiate LSAT. There's like libraries for LSAT, but like the kind of code generation part of it just isn't there yet. Another thing that like they're probably going to have to just figure out to get more adoption is like better integrations with like middleware application servers. Because like what you really want to be able to do is go to like some API gateway and just check a box that says monetize my API, and it uses LSATs. And like that just doesn't really exist yet. So there's like that kind of thing. There's also just like services like Voltage or LN Pay are probably going to be important with this, because like if all you're trying to do is monetize your API, you might not want to deal with like the care and feeding of a Lightning node and dealing with like inbound liquidity and like all that stuff. Instead, you just check a box that says monetize my API, and you want to be able to get payments for it and not have to deal with like a Lightning node. So there's like a bunch of steps that I think we need to get through before we really see LSATs take off. But like they're going to be really, really cool. I mean, if you think about the world that like the SaaS ecosystem is in right now, the way that all these things work, the way that all this stuff works is like you build, a software as a service company, and then you build like a metering system where people sign up for an account, they register a payment instrument, they use the service for a month, and at the end of the month, you add up all of their usage and you hit their credit card for it. And like you're taking counterparty risk. They don't necessarily know what their bill is going to be till the end of the month. They have to set up, an account. They have to like give you a bunch of payment information. There's like a minimum where you don't really want to charge them less than $1 because it's not worth the credit card processing fees. LSATs flip all of that on their head, where you can say, I'm going to give you programmatic access to my service, or I'm going to give you access to my SaaS business. And you don't need an account. You don't need to give me payment details. You just use it as much or as little as you want, and you just pay as you go, right? It's like the same way that Lightning payments kind of lower the payment, barrier to entry and like hurdle rate for person-to-person payments. LSATs are going to do that for APIs. It's going to be incredible.
Another cool thing about the LSATs is you can kind of create children from them. So if you have an LSAT and have access in the scope of what you're talking about, you had access to API endpoint A, B, and C, you could make another one and give your friend just access to C and then revoke it at any time, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, the cool thing is you can attenuate that though, so that you don't have to just give them full access. You can give them like a small subset of access to things, which they can further delegate, but only delegate within their subset. So it's like you can just spread that around and like infinitely sub-delegate API access, but whoever goes to delegate it further to someone else can only delegate what they've been delegated.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth.
Yeah, you can delegate to what you have or smaller. You can never delegate bigger.
Bitcoiners, I am so excited to tell you about the Bitcoin 2022 conference. You guys, Bitcoin 2021 was absolutely a smash hit success. It was over 13,000 Bitcoiners coming together, breaking the barriers on who can come together and celebrate freedom, celebrate Bitcoin, and the energy was absolutely electric. Unfortunately, it was just oversubscribed. There's just people flowing out everywhere. And this year we are making the conference bigger and better. We are moving over to the Miami Beach Convention Center, and we are going to be throwing a massive 4-day festival for Bitcoin, celebrating Bitcoin, bringing together the greatest minds in Bitcoin and the greatest businesses in Bitcoin. And lastly, the culture of Bitcoin all together. We have a 4-day extravaganza planned for you guys for Bitcoin 2022. Day one is going to be Industry Day. It is a day where you can buy a special ticket in order to just mingle and make business deals happen. Day 2 and 3 is going to be a full-blown Bitcoin conference. This is our main conference. This is going to be on April 7th and 8th. And then lastly, we have the Sound Music Festival, Day 4. Imagine going to Coachella, but for Bitcoin. There's going to be very few talks. It's going to be all about the culture of Bitcoin. It's going to be all about hanging with your fellow plebs. It is going to be an absolutely amazing time. There's going to be Bitcoin musicians, Bitcoin artists, and all your favorite Bitcoiners, and just an amazing environment to party and just see it all, soak it all in, and to get people to realize that a Bitcoin world, a world filled with Bitcoin people doing Bitcoin things, is the world that they want to live in. That's what Bitcoin 2022 is all about. That is what the Bitcoin conference is all about. That's what Bitcoin Magazine is all about. So it is going to be a celebration of Bitcoin, the Bitcoiners, and this amazing movement that is going to make the world a better place. Go to b.tc/conference, learn more about the Bitcoin conference, learn more about all the amazing things that are happening in Miami around the Bitcoin conference, and buy your tickets. And guess what? If you buy your tickets with Bitcoin, you save $100 on all the tickets and $1,000 on the whale pass. So if you want the VIP pass, the big kahuna, if you buy with Bitcoin, you save $1,000. That's a lot of sats. So go and do it right now, today. Don't wait. Prices are only going up. This is going to be a can't miss event. Bitcoiners, I want to tell you about the Deep Dive. The Deep Dive is Bitcoin Magazine's premium market intelligence newsletter. This is a no fluff, hard-hitting, incredible newsletter going deep into the market, helping you understand what's happening with derivatives, what's happening on chain, what's happening in macro, what's happening with the narrative, and what's happening with the tech. My man Dylan LeClaire is an absolute savant. He is making his name known in the Bitcoin community, getting shout outs left and right, getting on podcasts left and right, and him and his team are bringing you everything that you need to know about Bitcoin. You don't even have to be on Bitcoin Twitter. You can ignore every other newsletter. This is the newsletter to rule them all. Go over to members.bitcoinmagazine.com, sign up today, and if you use promo code MACRO, you get a full month for free. You have nothing to lose. What are you waiting for? Sign up, see the incredible work that Dylan and his team are putting out. And if you don't like it, just unsubscribe. You don't pay a dime. But if you do, you know, it's going to be well worth the sats in investment in understanding Bitcoin and gaining the confidence to continue to invest in Bitcoin and making the right moves around Bitcoin. And it's going to be well worth every single Satoshi. Again, can't recommend it enough. That is members.bitcoinmagazine.com, promo code MACRO. Do it today.
I have a question speaking on developer experience for Nate and Tim. It seems like your companies are focused on making the developer experience easier, but I was wondering, how do you guys see the future of Lightning Network as far as developer and consumer experience versus keeping the Lightning Network decentralized? Because everything you do to make the developer experience or the consumer experience easier also takes away from the decentralization part of it. And it's obvious that Lightning is going to be successful, but the question is, how centralized will it be?
Well, I think Greenlight is a step towards decentralization. It's a way to, instead of having custodial Lightning, you could do something similar but hold your keys. I think that's pretty cool.
I think Greenlight is somewhat different for services. Like companies, Greenlight is good for end user nodes, right? Like if you're like a wallet or, you know, something small, but for like an enterprise, you know, running high volume, like lots of sends and receives, Greenlight is probably not going to fit the bill for that. They're trying to hit a different market. LND, C Lightning are kind of the products for bigger services, which developers would probably be building against for, I think, most of the applications now. But I think there's a balance there. Like that's a good question, Mike, because that's something that I'm sure Voltage and I think about a lot. So the macaroons and the permission stuff, there's a difference between, there's just slowly becoming a difference between the key, holding the keys and having access to nodes. Those are two different things. And then you also have kind of the open source tools like LN bits and stuff like that. But there's always going to be a trade-off when you want a hosted service. Like hosting the node is the core problem. And, you know, there's always going to be, like what you're talking about. But as the space grows and those tools grow, it'll trend towards more self-custody.
I think there's also a lot of times people who are really into Bitcoin conflate a lot of things and lump it all into calling it centralized or decentralized. And like, there's parts of decentralization that I think people should really care about, and there's parts that I don't think people should care about. And one of the things that gets conflated is centralization and like tenancy, right? So like saying that the network is going to be decentralized is not the same as saying there will never be multi-tenant services, right? Like
can you define tenancy and multi-tenant services?
Yeah, so like tenancy is like how many people are like on the same hardware or in the same like administrative domain, right? So like if I okay, so Bitcoin Beach, right? Like they have like a community bank, right? It's God, I can never remember the name of the open source project that's behind it. Somebody up here knows it. But there's
Galoy.
That's it, Galoy. So Galoy is like an open source project to do community banking on top of Bitcoin, right? Like that's like a multi-tenant system, right? Like there's a bunch of people that are all, running like on the same underlying system. And I don't think anybody would like look at Galoy and say, oh my God, like Bitcoin's becoming more centralized, right? Like the thing that you really care about for, Lightning being decentralized is that like you don't have to trust some central authoritative entity to like make all of the decisions about what transactions are final or like who gets to make transactions. Like it's decentralized, and like different nodes on the network have the same primacy on the network, right? Like they might have different centrality, but like no node is like more authoritative than another node from like a protocol perspective. And so, we can have a very decentralized network that still have providers that are providing managed services. Like if I was talking about LSATs a second ago, like if I'm running an online, widget store, and like the thing I want to focus on is how to like sell widgets and delight my customers, and I want to accept Lightning transactions, like I probably want to go to a Lightning service provider that's going to manage all of the muck of uptime and channel health and all of that for me. And so that I just like don't have to deal with it. It's not my core business. And as long as like, I can switch providers, and as long as there's, lots of providers and like no one is kind of more important from a protocol perspective than another, you can still have a decentralized network. But like I, as a customer or as a user of the network, get to choose like how much of the care and feeding of nodes I want to do. So I guess that's all a long way of saying that like centralization like is important, but like you can definitely have a decentralized network that still has multi-tenant managed services. And that's actually a good thing for the network because it lets more people use the network productively instead of having every single human in the world worrying about like inbound liquidity.
It's like having a custodian, right? It's something similar to that, right? There is pros and cons to that, but some may want to use it for some purposes for a certain period of time. That's what you're trying to highlight.
Yeah, and I just want to say for Voltage, like Voltage, I can make an argument for pretty much every type of Lightning user why Voltage might be good for them, but yeah, there's going to be trade-offs and stuff. What's really great about Voltage is that merchants and stuff don't need to worry about uptime on their nodes and things like that are important to the sort of business side of the commerce side of Lightning, just as an example.
Well, I mean, I think like Rindell just kind of like hit a really important point on the head, and that's receiving liquidity. Like until you've actually built up a business model and have a lot of consistent demand with that, it's not going to be the easiest thing in the world long term to get receiving liquidity from somebody to actually receive those payments, because that liquidity provider is kind of taking a gamble on like allocating their liquidity to you on how successful your business is going to be, because that's where they're going to generate their revenue from. And so like just the simple reality, I think in the long term, is when you're starting out, you're going to need to go to like a custodial or third party service that already has that provisioned liquidity and get an account with them. And like you'll use that at first until you've demonstrated like enough consistent volume and like success with whatever your business model is to be able to take that and go directly source liquidity from someone.
I also think it's not, people will always give you inbound, but it'll just cost, right? There'll be a market for it, and you'll just have to factor that in to, your cost of doing business, especially at the beginning though. Like, I agree, it's a lot to take on when really you just want to focus on whatever your business is, not operating a Lightning node.
I've got a feeling there's going to be some really interesting inbound liquidity sort of generation methods coming out soon. I feel like that's something that's just ripe to be taken advantage of, whether it's leveraging pool or whatever. It could get interesting.
You can buy.
But I mean, you're increasing the cost of like trying a new business model there, where you don't have that cost using a custodial service. You know what I mean? Like, now you have to go pay like whatever channel leasing fee. You only have that guaranteed for the lease terms. Like, I know a lot of people don't want to hear this, but like the simplest, least headache, like most cost effective thing, trying something new is going to be go find a service.
Yep. And I mean, I've ran multiple routing nodes, and the easiest I've had it is just using loop, like just opening up a ton of channels and then looping out as much as possible just once. And then after that, you just open and rebalance. That's kind of my own personal strategy.
LN Big liquidity from LN Big, and obviously you can use pool, complicated, but there's other services popping up where you could just buy inbound. You don't know if it's good or
right.
I want to welcome Justin to the stage. Justin is one of the people behind Zion. Welcome, my friend.
Hey, brother. How you doing? Thanks so much for having me.
Zion's got a bunch of nodes that has to deal with liquidity, right?
Yeah, we have about as of today, we have about 1,800 nodes and 1,800 channels running inside the network. And I was just on a 3-hour call about liquidity. So it's a thing that we manage. And, I do think that there's ways to be able to help customers manage in a non-custodial environment, because we are non-custodial and we help manage liquidity, and, we do it with our root nodes in particular. So there are ways to kind of balance the best of both worlds, is allowing people to have full control of their funds, and then having a service, aka like what we're doing internally, to help manage that liquidity.
Good stuff.
Future's exciting. There's so many ways all this stuff could go, but they're all going to be great.
Well, let's take a moment and elaborate what those are. I know you're speaking generally, Dustin, but like, what do we feel the various paths are that are ahead of us, and kind of what are the trade-offs, that are associated with each of them?
Well, sir, that depends on what type of new base layer functionality we get, because that's kind of a limiting factor there.
Go on.
Well, I'm going to be a little bit of a buzzkill here, and I'm going to say that if we don't get what's needed on chain to make channel factories, then the Lightning Network itself is just going to become a settlement mechanism that most people can't afford to directly interact with. So channel factories or bust.
So I'm gonna.
Sounds like you're pitching for SysAg, which is my favorite Bitcoin upgrade.
I think the first thing Dustin ever said to me when we started hanging out so long ago was,
he's trolling me because he knows that I do not just want SysAg without some questions answered.
I actually realized now that I was talking, I didn't mean to. I forgot that you hate SysAg, but I'm now remembering.
Wait. I have an important thing. We gotta define these terms, because, there's like 300 people in here, and I feel like most of them don't understand what we're talking about when we say like SysAg or,
cross input signature aggregation.
There you go.
I think the challenge is like there's a bunch of potential Bitcoin upgrades out there, and they have like code names, right? And the code names can even change over time. And SysAg is just my code name for this particular upgrade, but there's other names for it too.
So what are the other ones, and what are they? What is SysAg, cross input signature aggregation, competing against, and how do they relate to the Lightning Network?
I don't think SysAg actually has a competitor. I know. Do you know one, Shinobi?
Yes. L2 and OpCTV, which are going to happen first, sir, until my questions about cross-input signature aggregation.
You're just talking about...
Oh, shit, dog. Wait, let's be more specific.
Competing to get...
What BIPs?
It's not a competitor to the feature. That's just a competitor for any upgrade at all. It's a different kind of thing.
Wait. Let's be as specific as possible. What BIPs, Bitcoin Improvement Protocols, are we talking about specifically by number, please?
I don't think SysAg has one.
Oh, shit, dog. I didn't realize that.
you can't just demand like an exact BIP number out of people like that, dog. What about people who hate math and don't think in numbers?
Yeah, but you're not one of those people.
Bust.
Yes.
I'd say the outlook is like OPSI TV, any Prev out, SysAg, and then there's a fourth one that I'm blanking on that's also important. That's
Wait, Dustin. I'm going to force you. I'm going to force you to define each of those terms. What are the things that each of those BIPs provide, and why are they valuable? And relate it back to Lightning if you can, but if not, go ahead.
To Lightning, wow, we're getting really stretching the brain cells here. But I think the easy ones to explain are any Prev out and OPSI TV. These, I think, are very much competing with each other because they're both ways to, how to explain this without using jargon, to sign a transaction before it's used and then have it usable once funds arrive somewhere without defining where is. That sounds kind of wordy, but the big way to think about it is it allows you to, say, build a dead man switch. So if you think about airplanes today, the pilots in the front, they have a locked door that you can't break in since 9/11, right? But in case the pilots die for some reason, the flight crew can still get into the cockpit, but they have to press this button, and then they have to wait 5 minutes or so. And in that 5 minutes, the pilot has a little light blinking, and they can cancel it. So as long as the pilot's alive, you can never get through the door. But if they're dead, then 5 minutes will expire, the door just automatically unlocks. And this is the kind of thing that's made possible by OPSI TV and any Prev out. And you can do that with, instead of a door, you could do it with Bitcoin. So you could do a thing where like someone can press this button saying Dustin's dead. And then maybe I have like 6 months to notice and be like, wait, I'm not dead. And that's the category of thing that's enabled by any Prev out OPSI TV. But because, one, that's just really cool, but it also enables a bunch of like really more sophisticated and nuanced things in Lightning, because Lightning benefits from this kind of dead man switch quite a bit. It actually uses a variant of it entirely already, and this will allow it to use more sophisticated dead man switches, which will enable Lightning to be, bigger, faster, better, stronger, basically.
And what we're talking about here is proposed BIPs, which are Bitcoin Improvement Protocols, and it is the system by which the Bitcoin Core implementation is upgraded. And there's a lot of politics and implementation behind it, but essentially what we're talking about is upgrades to Bitcoin Core, which is one of the most, if not the most, peer-reviewed software package in existence. And so these may sound like sort of trivial or unimportant updates, but they have far-reaching implications. And so people correctly spend a lot of time thinking about and investing in what is the most secure and effective way to implement the functionality that is needed or is desired in order to improve Bitcoin. So most recently, we're talking about, Taproot and Schnorr, which I forget the BIP numbers off the top of my head, but those are that we went through a whole thing of trying to figure out, like, okay, how do we effectively decentralize the decision to upgrade to these systems? And eventually what was decided was something called speedy trial, which was kind of a shortcut. And Taproot and Schnorr, and there's actually one other BIP that is associated with that as well. They go live in November. So, cross-input signature aggregation and all the other stuff we're talking about are sort of what is the next Bitcoin Improvement Protocol, or BIP, that will be implemented on Bitcoin, and what will it empower, and why is it important?
Well, also, how are you supposed to farm Twitter followers if you just agree on things? Like, you got to drag it out so that you can.
Yeah, I disagree with that. I feel attacked.
I'm going to need those BIP numbers, sir. I'm going to need those actual BIP numbers for the 3 Taproot BIP.
Yeah. Give me a second. I'll call it up.
I want the prime roots of those BIP numbers only, please.
So,
all right. So I'm gonna be an autist right here, real quick.
Here it comes.
BIP 118, any prevout, is effectively a weird trick where you can make a signature that does not have to actually specify a specific unspent UTXO. Just
also
the
called
script,
a previous output.
Just the amount. And this lets you play games where you can take a signature from, say, an older Lightning channel transaction and just take that and attach it to the most recent one, and it will still be valid and can just like spend the old transaction. So both would confirm. The new one would spend the old one into the correct channel balance, and we wouldn't need penalty keys anymore. And that also lets us do channel factories with multiple people because you don't need to deal with the penalty key stuff, which gets very complex. BIP 119, OpCTV, is kind of an opcode that lets you spend coins to a commitment of how they will be spent in the future, and you can chain them together. So like instead of making a pre-signed transaction that could be replaced, it's doing the same thing, but it's enforced by consensus. So once you commit to something, you can literally never change how it has to be spent in the future. That will let you do channel factories in a different way. That actually lets you do safe Lightning channels where you can open them and pay people without the other person having to be online. Decentralized mining pools, a whole bunch of other fun stuff. And also, the Taproot BIPs are BIP 340, 341, and 342.
Ah, you beat me to it. I literally just pulled it up, you son of a bitch.
Yeah, P, and
there is a third
wait, hold on.
now.
Rindell, go for it. And then Dustin.
I was just going to say that the T in CTV is template. So it's check template verify. And so the way to think about this is that when you a Bitcoin transaction, what you're really doing is you're taking coins from an input and then you're locking them or encumbering them to some set of spending conditions. And like when you normally just send it to an address, I'm doing address in air quotes right now, you're saying, in order to spend these in the future, you have to produce a signature that corresponds to the private key that's represented by this address. What CTV lets you do is it lets you say these are encumbered by a template transaction. And if you think about templates, it's like you have a bunch of stuff that's filled out and a bunch of stuff that's left blank. So imagine if you could like encumber a future spend to like a future transaction that matches a particular template. That's the model that you should have in your head for CTV. Sorry, Dustin, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, it's good. It's good to get the explanations out there. I find CTV so confusing because it makes you think about check time lock verify, which is an existing opcode, but that's neither here nor there. I was going to say that there's a third competitor now that's come on the mailing list, which is Covenants. And so, like, I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing more competitors within the same space of any vouch and verify and now Covenants. Because there's kind of like there's a lot of ways to skin this cat, and I think it's not objectively clear what the best one.
So I just want to be clear. I studied anatomy in college, and contrary to popular belief, there is only one way to skin a cat. Just throw that out there.
I want to defer back to the autist Shinobi here. As you said, it seems like CTV was like the general consensus way of going about L2 after any Prevout lost some steam on like what would be potentially the next soft fork. But now there is a tap leaf update verify that's
oh my god
quite a bit of steam.
Okay, wait.
And then after that, another PTLC's Bolt 2 and 3 changes on the mailing list. So if anyone has read it and actually digested that, I love them to speak up. And I think Shinobi's autism may really pay off here. And with that, I'll retreat back into the audience.
No. Don't you dare. Don't you fucking dare. Stay up on stage. You're an amazing contributor. I see you trying to like hide and like rescind back into the darkness. If you leave the stage, I'm going to ban you from the room. You stay up here. Oh, god damn it. Vivek is the head of BD at Blockstream and an incredible...
You have to ban him now.
I can't. It was an empty threat. Yep. It was an empty fucking threat.
Well, then now we know all your threats are empty. So how are you going to troll us with threats now, huh?
I'm moving you. I'm moving you to the audience, Shinobi. I just removed you to the audience for doubting me. I'm inviting you back up. Contain yourself. Never doubt me again. But no, I just want to give Vivek some serious props because he is the head of BD at Blockstream, and he loves to sell himself short and define himself as someone who's like, oh, I'm just some sales guy, but really he understands a lot of the stuff more than
like a huge time lag because I heard myself.
Yeah, that sounds like a you problem.
Yeah, there's a lag.
Sounds like a you problem. The point is, follow Vivek. He's an OG and he has helped me, make a lot of these spaces amazing. So Vivek, please come back up. And if you don't, I'll hate you forever. Let's proceed.
While we're in the city of controversial like Bitcoin upgrades, there's all this talk of Coinbase commitments. Like maybe we should have a Coinbase commitment to the most influential Bitcoiner.
Oh, good God.
Every block.
I also just want to acknowledge we've gone very firmly off track from build shit on Lightning. Tim, I appreciate you for sticking around through all of this.
It's a lot of good info, man.
It is. I mean, the people up on stage are incredible. Y'all should follow them. Also, shameless shill. You should seriously consider, if not immediately, buy tickets for Bitcoin 2022. I'm the head of programming for that. It is going to be spectacular, to be blunt.
But, it's going to be really fun sabotaging all of P's plans.
I wish you had that power, because then it would be interesting. But you will be there, I hope, and we're going to have some fun. Justin, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I know you came in here. I pulled you up on stage against your will. What do you have any thoughts about everything we've been talking about so far? The trade-offs in terms of the various BIPs that have been suggested, or that are kind of in flight, and also the Lightning Network as kind of a base protocol that empowers so much more. And
yeah, I mean, I think it's a great question around enabling the future of the creator economy at large. And I think a lot of these improvements, I think, are going to help tremendously, because it allows us to be able to scale to millions of people, right? So the idea of like the one member, the one person, one node model is very challenging. And, there's exciting things coming out with .14 on LND that allows for multiple people to kind of share a channel. But all of these improvements at the base layer just allow us to scale with the same peer-to-peer qualities that we think the future of the internet should hold. Everyone, I mean, if you just take the social media aspects that we're trying to tackle, is that, people should have access to all their information on private keys. So the same way that we encrypt private keys for Bitcoin transactions, we want to use that for messaging and for data. And so taking all that into account, and all these improvements of the base layer help us scale. That's our biggest thing, is we want to help more people use Bitcoin, not just as a monetary network, but as an app store. Because I do believe the Lightning Network is the future base layer of a new type of app store. And we're just seeing, the beginning of a few apps being created, right? We're just one of them. Obviously, you have amazing apps like Sphinx. You have amazing apps like the wallets that are being created. But ultimately, using this base layer of Bitcoin as the new internet, to me, is what we're most excited about.
Are you guys looking at, or have you looked at like Ion or other decentralized identity things that anchor back to Bitcoin?
We haven't looked at that in particular, because the way that we prefer to think about identity is related to a Lightning pub key. Because if you can start using a Lightning pub key address, not only as your identifier, but then you use it as your wallet, your credit card, you can use it for many different things. And then it's universal. So it can be universal across different applications. Like, one thing that I find really cool about what we've been able to build is that if you have a pub key inside of Sphinx, and then you have a pub key inside of Zion, you can communicate interoperably across two different applications, because you're using Lightning addresses as the core way of these two things to communicate. So we haven't used something else. We're just using the protocol layer things that exist right now.
Have you, like, what happens when somebody needs to roll their key, right? Either because they're running a node and it craps out, and they build a new node, or they've got to rotate it or something, right? Because if you don't have like a layer of indirection between your identity and like a literal key on your Lightning node, then like you're really pinned to the identity of your Lightning node. Have you guys thought about that?
We haven't thought about that in particular, because what's also related to the pub key is also your channel. So if you're abandoning your node, you're effectively also abandoning the channels. You're abandoning the liquidity. You have to close channels. So we think that this pub key identifier will be something that will be used for a long time. We kind of want to compare it to almost like a cell phone number, right? Because you might change service carriers, but you're not necessarily going to change the digits of that phone number.
But I mean, Justin, doesn't that have real serious privacy implications? in terms of using something like that tied to your Lightning channels like that universally?
What was the question? I'm sorry.
Like, doesn't trying to use your node pub key as like an ID, like in as many cases as you can, like, isn't that a huge potential privacy concern?
I'm not sure I understand how it could be a privacy concern, but I'm open to understanding how it could be.
Well, just correlating like all the activity that you would use that identifier for to a specific Lightning node, like specific Lightning channels with UTXOs that can be followed on chain.
So the question is tying a pub key as an identifier to the channels. So is this a question of like anonymity or?
No, I'm saying like using that in other use cases, like as a general like digital ID. Right. Like given that it is inherently tied to those things.
Like I think it would depend on the person, right? I think there's some people that generally have more public lives. They have more things that they like to share. And I obviously understand the anonymity of how someone would be in this world in particular. And that's their choice, right? They don't have to actually disclose who they are. They never have to tie this pub key to who they actually are in the real world, right? So we're not tying names, for example, inside our application to the person. You make up whatever name you want. You can be whoever you want related to your pub key. So I think it's up to the member, to the customer to decide on their own what they're willing to share, what they're not willing to share.
But I mean, it's just the fact that you're correlating all of that digital activity to that single identifier. Like all it takes is one data breach, one leak, one dude you know who's a scumbag, and all of a sudden you do have a real world ID tied to that. And that can still even be pretty damaging, even if you never have a real name tied to that. Well, seeing the correlation of everything.
Yeah, and I think just to remember, the information that we're talking about is actually encrypted on the device itself. So there's a private key that encrypts all the information on the device itself within a database on the node. So I think getting to inside of that particular like private key to access all the information related to that, like we don't even have access to it as a company, even though we provision some of these nodes. So I think there would be it would take an incredible type of an attack to be able to, and if I'd show you how long our private keys are, it's like scrolling down on your phone for like 10 seconds to export that information. So I think that the type of attack that you're talking about would be very challenging to do.
But I mean, it's all tied to your pub key. Like if you go use that pub key to interact with other services to create an account there, like they still see that public key. Like all of that is tied to a single identity. And any type of data breach, any information lost from any service you interact, any protocol you conduct using that pub key, now all correlates all of your behavior in all of those different contexts to your single identity.
I don't disagree with you, Shinobi, but I do feel compelled to acknowledge that, we have the same problem in plebnet, right? Like all of us have clearly named our nodes on Amboss, and we have also registered with, Cheese Robot, which basically means that every single thing we do for the nodes that we have registered in plebnet are fully doxed. And maybe what you're saying is just maybe you're saying like, hey, it's important to acknowledge these trade-offs rather than trying to kind of obscure them or claim otherwise.
Well, but P, do you go take your Lightning node on plebnet and go log into a porn site with that? Like, no, you don't. So
look,
like
that's
now I want to.
I mean, look, that's a personal question, but also
sign me up.
Yeah, and you,
like it's a slightly different thing, right? Because like plebnet,
what is that background noise,
porn?
Dustin? Are you like choking a duck, or is that like zip ties, or what's going on?
Don't you? Hold on.
No, wait, that's
we don't call it choking the duck anymore. It's inappropriate language. Now we call it using a porn site.
Okay.
With your Lightning
Apologies.
Yeah, it's my Lightning node in the background. I mean, so like on plebnet, right? Like we're a bunch of people who get together to talk about running Lightning nodes, and we are associating our identities with our Lightning nodes because we're talking about Lightning nodes, right? Like, I think the thing that Shinobi's pointing out, right, is like there's a lot of other, behavior that gets tied to your Lightning pub key. So I can look up your Lightning pub key, see your channels, and go look at like on-chain UTXOs. and I can probably, find a bunch of other addresses that belong to you because they're part of funding transactions to your Lightning node, based on your pub key. And like if you're talking about getting together and talking to people about Lightning and doing Lightning transactions, you kind of know what you're doxing yourself like into, right? Like I'm exposing information about my Bitcoin activity to my, Bitcoin hobbyist group. If you're talking about like, hey, I'm going to go and do some like photo sharing and talk to people about, recipes or politics or like whatever, it's like probably a little bit surprising if then all my financial activity is doxed. Like, I think that's what
I think it's a really, I think what's really important about the point that you're making is particularly how we've like nested some of this stuff inside the application. Inside of communities, for example, no one has any idea what your pub key is. You're actually an anonymous name of whoever you want to be. You can actually change your name for each whatever community. And then the only people that know your pub key are people that you've allowed to actually begin a conversation with you, and they know your pub key already. So you're actually, it's not something that's like available for everyone to see. It's not an open on any sort of a ledger, at least in our application, it's not open to the whole world. And then if you want to decide to verify it, like people are verifying an Amboss, you can potentially verify it later on. So it's giving you the choice. It's giving you the choice of what you want to do. But I hear you. I hear you in the anonymity point.
Cool. Yeah. This is the first I've heard of Zion. Like I'm just looking at your website on my phone right now. It looks super cool. I'm totally going to check it out.
I'm just really hesitant to see that kind of connection get made. Like, couldn't you do like a derivative key scheme that you could disconnect from your actual like node pub key, like have proof systems that don't necessarily reveal things entirely? Like,
well, I Zion, right? Because or I'm sorry, not Zion, Ion, right? They both have Ion as the tail of the thing, but like, it's literally identity that you can like put other stuff in front of and like have a layer of indirection between, your identifier and the actual auth token.
And I think that like just to Lighthouse, what's your name, Lighthouse? Sorry.
You can just call me Brian. I change my name every day.
Okay, so Brian, I think the beautiful point about what you're making, and I receive this, is that we just launched 60 days ago, so we're still very early in this entire process. And feedback from the community of things like this are just things we add to our roadmap. We say, okay, you know what? Inside of the relay on these nodes, we need to add this special code that allows this for allowed to one abstraction layer of anonymity for particular types of customers. We can do that. It's all part of the building process and the feedback. And I'm definitely taking into account what you're saying and writing it down and saying, you know what, that might be a good idea for certain people, and creating that. I think that's the whole point of these discussions, is that like, I'm not the type of a founder or CEO just to take like, oh, this is the way and this is the only way. It's all about, as a community, we figure out better ways to work with each other, because we're building it for you. We're not just building it for ourselves and echo chambers.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to
build stuff for my own echo chamber.
I just want to say, like, sorry if it seems like I'm really grinding on you. It's just like, especially with Lightning, which has the potential to have a very high base level of privacy. Like, I am really, like, just whenever I hear anything that relates to privacy or potential leaks of stuff built on Lightning, like, that's immediately where my head goes. Because what gets built out in these early days, that's really going to inform like what there is that people have to interact with or build on successively in the future. You know what I mean?
Totally.
But sorry, I think I cut you off. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I was just going to say that I thoroughly enjoy a good echo chamber. I'm working on building the best Bitcoin echo chamber for my life that I can.
It's called Bitcoin Adult Swim.
Moment may have passed.
You should drop in sometime.
What is that again? That sounds exciting.
All right, my friends, we are at almost 2 hours now, and I think I'm going to close this out. What I'd like to do is go around the speakers and ask for your thoughts on Lightning. Some prompts are things you are particularly excited about, things you are particularly concerned about, and things that you would like to see explored further. In general, you can take all three of those things, or one of them, or none of them. It's up to you. But Justin, since you're on my screen immediately to my right, let's start with you.
I think I'm most excited for creators to finally be able to develop a one-to-one relationship through money with their audiences. and not have an arbiter in the middle of deciding what can be said, what can be paid for, how they can transfer value. I'm most excited about that because for the first time, we're going to be able to build like that peer-to-peer internet on a monetary layer. And that's what I'm most excited about that Lightning provides.
I love it. Shinobi?
Well, let's see. I want to see DLCs dropped on everything for fancy smart contracts. We need to get those channel factory things going. We can really do some fun stuff with routing if we make state chains play nice with Lightning. Should I continue being autistic or can I stop?
No, you got to choose. You got to choose the top three. So I've already forgotten what the first thing you said was.
Well, it's just like here's what I want to see Lightning go in the direction of, and what I find exciting. All this literally is a bunch of pre-signed transactions that have smart contracts linking them together and enforcing different outcomes.
100%.
Like if you stop thinking about things like pipes connecting like buckets or nodes, you can do a lot of interesting things programming pre-signed transactions interacting with each other. So it's about the transactions, not the graph of pipes and stuff.
I just want to let you know, I feel attacked. I feel like you are deliberately sabotaging my analogy, which is a spider web with a bunch of channels in between them. But
I am.
Yeah,
I actually gave a professional talk at a conference a few years ago just to troll UP.
Perfect. We'll talk about this at home later. Dustin, what you got?
What's up? Okay, we're talking about Lightning. That's a very open-ended prompt. I'm excited about Lightning in general completely. I think it's the future of everything. I thought that for a while. I'm excited that more and more people keep being excited about Lightning. And I think that today we did talk about some like centralization, decentralization tongue twister concerns. And I think those, we should think about that. And I think that things naturally gravitate towards centralization when it comes to just money and finances in general. And the better we can build tools that make decentralization easy, convenient, or dare I say even more convenient than the centralized counterparts, the better off I think everything will be in the long run. So I'm a huge proponent of anything in that direction, whether it's, like I don't care if it's CTV or PrevOut or whatever. I think that anything that goes in that direction, I'm excited about.
Love it. Tim, the guest of the hour, creator of LNPay.co. What you got?
One thing I've been thinking about lately about the Lightning Network is just how early it is still. So if you're paying attention now, then you're already early, and don't underestimate how much influence you can have. Constantly think about that and how like right now people like us are just setting standards by just talking about it, and super bullish on it, and it's just going to keep growing, and it's already grown so much just in the 2 years I've been in the space. So, it's important to recognize that and realize that like this is something special, and it's bullish all around. And one thing that I'm particularly excited about is a lot of the podcasting 2.0 stuff. Been working a lot with Adam Curry and Dave Jones and those guys, and the thing that I think is the most special about it is that it's one of the first, in my experience in the Lightning space, like one of the first use cases at scale that came looking for a solution. They weren't just like, oh, I'm going to build this on Lightning. They're like, yo, we need to solve this problem. We want to kind of decentralize the money flow amongst podcasts. They already use RSS, so it's already like somewhat there. And they were able to kind of, actually use Lightning Network in a useful way with micropayments, and it's working. And that adoption is growing in the real world. And it's real like market validation, and I think that stuff is cool and something to keep an eye on.
I love it.
Yep.
Good
Thanks
stuff,
for
man.
the space, man.
Hell yeah. KP, you're up next.
Hey, so channel factories, I would love to see more, and at least read upon that more and see channel factories actually take off and, get implemented in some way. The other thing I'm excited about is Lightning addresses. I wish like they get embedded in like web pages where you sort of like, hyperlink, you click on it and just say, hey, these many Satoshis to this person I'm paying, one click. That'll be kind of awesome. And then like podcasting 2.0 stuff, streaming sats for like real life stuff, just for example, if I want to support like a family, their electricity bill in another part of the world directly peer-to-peer, I just go stream sats and their electricity for that month is paid off, based on the consumption basis, or like, water bill or something like that. I think in future, some of those use cases will be fantastic. So those are the things it is coming. It is going to happen. It is a matter of time. Like streaming sats with Lightning will bring a lot of use cases in the future. Those are the things I'm excited about.
Yeah, that's a fantastic answer. Again, it goes back to the thing I was saying a minute ago, which is that when you try to explain to people why the Lightning Network is so significant, people are so embroiled in the traditional financial system. They're so used to having to wait for 5 days to fund their Fold wallet or their, Venmo or whatever it is. And it's just kind of anathema to people to be like, no, this is final settlement. You can have that in seconds. I'm going to send you some sats and they are yours forever. There's no way for me or anyone else to reclaim those. More importantly, they didn't go through some central bank, or they didn't go through, worse, a credit card company to your bank account, to my bank account, mediated by some central bank. It's just such a powerful thing. And I've been spending a lot of time, I don't mean to harp on it, but I've been spending a lot of time thinking about like, how can we educate people more effectively on how significant that is, specifically in the US. Because in other countries, it's like people get that immediately. They're like, oh shit, yeah, this is a thing that can't be fucked with by the government. I'm 100% in, 150%. But in the US, when you talk to people, they're just so kind of lulled to sleep by the status that the US has as the producer of the world reserve currency, that I am constantly sort of thinking about the fact that U.S. citizens are probably the ones that are going to get the most screwed over by, the U.S. sort of bending over backwards to support the build back better, everyone has nothing and is happy narrative.
Well, and the U.S. citizens have just benefited from inflation so much. Anyone who owns a home, it's just like
100%,
whether they realize it or not,
Well, they don't. That's the problem.
Some U.S. citizens.
Yeah, but I mean,
wants.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's the problem, right? Like most people don't like to acknowledge like, oh yeah, this has nothing to do with me. This is because the federal government, the Fed, printed massive amounts of money and will do anything to keep the ball rolling. Most people are that's an uncomfortable realization to have, right? People love to say like, I'm a genius. I made a good investment in property or corn or whatever it was.
Yeah, it's hard to see facts that go counter to what made you wealthier.
Well, I mean, I think it's even harder to see facts that, well, maybe not harder, but it is as hard to see facts that remove the agency from yourself and put it squarely on powers that you have no control over. That's a really, really challenging thing for most people to accept and strategize around. It's so much easier to be like, I'm a genius. That's why I'm rich. But won't always be that way. Leon, you have been relatively quiet. You are a user of lnpay.co, which is a platform that I love, as we were talking about earlier. What are your thoughts on the Lightning Network? What are you excited about? What are you terrified of? What do you wake up in the morning, sort of like pumping your fist in the air about?
Yeah, I think the most has been discussed, but we as application builders, we have to keep in mind the decentralization and the privacy topics while building our application. And on top of that, I'm excited to see a lot of experiments with value transfer, human to human, human to machine, machine to machine. And there's a lot of happening in the space. I'd love to see a lot more developers working on the Lightning Network just to start experiments and see what happens and where we can go. And on the higher level, yeah, I'm very excited to see the extra layers that will be built on top of the Lightning Network and the smart contracting and the other things that will happen. So I think we have exciting times ahead, and we can all do our best.
I love it. So I've gotten a few questions. Was this space recorded? Will it be released? The answer is yes. This is Bitcoin Spaces Live with Bitcoin Magazine. I'm at Bitcoin Magazine as the head of programming for the Bitcoin 2022 conference. I would highly suggest that everyone research that and probably buy tickets. It's going to be absolutely incredible. There's going to be a bunch of fun stuff specifically related to open source and the Lightning Network. In addition, this specific conversation and all the other ones we have in the Bitcoin Magazine spaces are released on Bitcoin Spaces Live, which you can search for on whatever your favorite podcast app is, or you can go to Bitcoin Magazine, YouTube, and find it somewhere there. You'll have to search around, but you're all smart. You can figure it out. My friends, thank you so much for jumping in. As always, I appreciate you, and this is great.